we've been seeing a lot of the emergence of special educational needs with our children.
When people hear the word special education or the word special education needs, they automatically think difficult, incapable, disabled. I think the more certain conditions have been explained, the more you begin to realize that, in quotes, autism in itself is not actually bad.
The interesting thing is that some of these kids, when they even in the university setting that have some of these, they do brilliantly well.
When I talk about culture now, I begin to reflect on what culture do we really, really want to bring to bear. So I say, the one that supersedes all the cultures, the kingdom culture.
Identifying your child's gifting, understanding, because the scripture says in the Amplified, you train a child in the way that they should grow, or in their bent, it says. So that bent means your giftings, the things that you like,
I like that.
that they will not depart. We always take that scripture as a disciplinary.
Why do fathers not want to talk about it? Why do fathers do the disappearing act and they're not there in the lives of their children? Why is mom left alone to take care of this child? Hello, welcome back to Echoes of Our Community, where we look at real stories, real lives that hopefully will make real impact. And it's a wonderful time of the year because we're celebrating, we're looking at issues about fathers, male figures, stepdads, and I count it an honor to be your host at such a time like this as we look at this podcast series. And today I have with me a wonderful set of people that I'm always excited to have around me because it's always a pleasure. So we have Mr. Stephen Adewale is a father of, I just like celebrating him as being a father of 3 beautiful young girls. And the fact that he's an advocate for fathers and how we impact, how fathers make a change. So you're welcome once again, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
We have Elio Ajiboye here, and she's an educationist strategist. That's how we like to say that. But she makes her impact through her lived experience, looking at how she found education, and that's given her the passion to support parents in on their educational journey with their children. And today we have her here because we're here together to support the lovely and wonderful men around us. So you're welcome once again. I also have with me Dr. Solomon Bauer. You're most welcome. And he's a lecturer. He does a lot of things with young people. There was something was saying before about working with young minds and those challenges and using all those skills. But he's a father also of 2 young children. And it's a pleasure to have him because he always looks at the legacy that his father left him. So you're welcome once again as we talk on this podcast.
Privileged to be here.
Thank you. And finally, we have Mr. Martin Vito. And you know what? He's got all that energy that, but what I like about him is the depth and the knowledge, being in education himself, working with young people, bringing up young people to be the best that they can be, and being humble enough to say that he's learning at the same time. So you're welcome, Martin.
Pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. So today, I'm going to be we're going to be talking about something a bit different, but something that is not always spoken about, especially with fathers. Now, I'm going to give a few scenarios. You can tell me, I want to see what you're going to respond, guys. If I come home as mom and I said, I just went to the GP and they said my daughter's speech or my son's speech language has been, there's been a delay and that's why they're behaving badly in school, So, honey, what can we do about that? How are you going to respond? Typically, not you now, what should be, but how do you think people respond?
What's our problem?
Where is this coming from?
Where is this? Go on, tell me more.
Whose child is this?
What demon?
Thank you. What if I come home and I say, your child's been put into detention on a number of times now, and the behavior has been bad, and they're saying that if this behavior continues, there's going to be and they said we need to do an assessment because they're suspecting that there might be an issue of autism and ADHD. What's going to be your response to that?
Your enemy has autism.
They don't know what they're talking
You
about.
didn't get that well?
How dare they?
How dare-
They are child. They're enemy. No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah.
So that is where we're looking at this on this podcast.
Absolutely.
We've been seeing a lot of the emergence of special educational needs with our children, and especially as a community that have not had that experience from where we're coming from. Fathers play a role, but it's an overlooked thing whereby fathers tend to be, and that's what we want to explore. Why do fathers not want to talk about it? Why do fathers do the disappearing act and they're not there in the lives of their children? Why is mom left alone to take care of this child or to look or to navigate the system? Even if they have to take that child for prayers like they normally do and the dad's not there. Why? That is what we want to talk about right now.
Ooh.
Go on.
So I'm from like what I would call like the millennial generation, and I think within the millennial generation there seems to be a hard, strong shift into seeking to understand special education needs. At the same time, I can say that when people hear the word special education needs, they automatically think difficult, incapable, disabled, not worth paying attention to. That's what they hear. Whereas I think the more certain conditions have been explained, the more you begin to realize that, in quotes, autism in itself is not actually bad, but it just means that that young person receives information differently to how I'm typically used to communicating it. Now I'm saying it in the nicest way, but when you see these some of these conditions in action, it can throw you off the loop because we go with what we're used to seeing, and then we see something completely different. We go, this is foreign, it doesn't belong here, get it out of my classroom. So the seeking to understand is something that is growing in the community. For me personally, I think that to hear about SEN, having grown up about 14 years in Africa, I came to the UK. I didn't know all this SEN stuff. It was like, what are you talking about? And a lot of the times when young people are referring to it to each other in secondary school, they're referring to it in a kind of negative way.
Yeah, the bullying.
Shut up, you're SEN. And that's why Miss is always standing next to you, because they talk about the TAs. And maybe if it's a TA that the kids don't like, they're like, that's why Miss so-and-so is always standing next to you, you're SEN. And so it's used as a bullying tactic. And actually, even the child who has SEN needs isn't necessarily then sort of wanting to receive the help. So they actually can make their classroom experience quite difficult so that they are removed from the class.
Wow.
Because of what other young people have said about them, because of their parents not having an understanding of what SEN actually means.
It's wonderful that you said that, because I've been working with parents as well as young people. And one of the things that we came up with was the fact that apart from the parents being supported to understand it, we need to get other young people as well. And I did a focus group with young people last year. And one of the things the young people said was that the school is still not getting them to understand it.
Nope.
So if they understand it, how do we? So you can see where with the dilemma we are in. And for the sake of those watching us, when we talk about special education, there's quite a range of them. The typical ones that we are focused, that we come in touch with is like autism, ADHD, dyslexia. Anxiety is a condition, but not necessarily expressed like that, but it's still part of it. But there are quite a few, and these are the things that our children they're growing up with that. But fathers, now the issue is that mothers, because of our emotional intelligence and that, but dads.
Yeah. So some dad look at it like as if it's a stain to their reputation.
Wow.
You can imagine that somebody will have such kind of a child and nobody knows about that, maybe in his workspace, in his colleagues, because he feels as if I share this or if I speak about this, the perception with people, the society will look at him, it's different, negativity. But the interesting thing is that some of these kids, when they even in the university setting that have some of these, they do brilliantly well.
Of course.
Very good. So now orientation, cultural perception, something that, oh, okay, we're coming from Africa, we don't know much about this. So where is this coming from? Like when you ask the first question, say, where is this coming from?
The demon.
From which from demon? Where, what kind of water has he taken? So agreeing to align with reality,
Yeah.
to know the impact and the effect of this. So we totally look at, oh, if this special education need, this child is involved in, or this situation, he has found himself, oh, or herself, I said, oh, there's nothing good coming out. So this is a kind of conclusion that we draw. And this is from what? Cultural. And sometimes we want to see how will the society look at us if I have such kind of a child. But it's not a stain. It's a reality that we just need to align with. But most fathers shy away from it. And the issue of patience is not there. Because it's all about how they process information.
Wow.
The speed at which they process information compare to their peers. So, but that does not mean there's nothing good coming out of this. But as fathers, because of lack of that patience, you talk about emotional intelligence of the woman.
And the pride
the-
as well, the
good.
ego, that doesn't make me look good. So you handle it, you sort it out. Stephen, what do you have to say?
I completely agree with what Dot says there in terms of, sometimes we just don't want to as well. We don't want to face
And that's
that.
honesty.
We just like, and I think that also stems again from that thing called pride. That how are they going to look at me? So again, we're taking that and making that an issue, as opposed to looking at how can I help the child?
Yeah.
Because it's not about me. I'm where I'm at. We need to be thinking about that. I'm where I'm at, but thinking about how can I help that child and take off that cloak and be vulnerable. Being vulnerable. We as men, it comes back to what we've been talking about in past times, about us being vulnerable to the point that, okay, I've got a situation here right now. How do I deal with it? And understanding that if the partner brings it to you, she's already part of the solution,
Yeah.
as opposed to the problem.
Yeah.
So that's something for us to be thinking about as men, as we're moving this whole conversation forward, that, okay, I've been told this now. Let's take a step to see how we can find a solution together, as opposed to labeling somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's an issue really, because sometimes even when you now accept it, okay, my child might have a condition,
Yeah.
you say, but you're better equipped to handle it than me. Sometimes we pass the buck.
Again, that's shifting blame and all that.
Responsibility.
Because I have worked with a few dads, and there's a particular dad that he's the only one that goes for in fact, he takes it, in fact, more than his partner. He goes to the child, he's taking care of his son, he's doing everything. In fact, he's the only dad at the what they have a coffee more, and he's the only dad there. And you see, and you feel good that you could do that, but not. How do we bring other men, into that? Elio?
I wouldn't even say that I would know how to best answer that question in terms of how to bring men into that, because as we've discussed, there's so many interplays there. When you are an expectant father along with the mother, you're not told of the different variants that could possibly happen. You're just having a baby. Do you understand? And everybody's looking forward to the baby. And it's when the baby's been delivered, if there is anything adverse, it's in the midst of all of that. All that information is just shoved on the mum mainly, to process in the midst of the trauma. Do you understand what I'm saying? And then when the dust settles, and there is, as you said, the doctor's diagnosis. The first thing is very insular. You're looking at, so are you saying I did that? Are you accusing me? It's almost like it seems when I speak to clients and I'm listening to people, listening to podcasts, it's always this self-accusation. And of course, nobody really wants to know that they've given birth or they've helped in the creation of a child that isn't the way they expected it to be. Do you understand? And so that journey in and of itself is a journey now of denial, self-reflection, accusation. And of course, when things go wrong, it's always easy to accuse the other person, isn't it? And in education, you know, I do a lot of talks around unlocking children's potential. And I always say, even with a child with sin, the Bible didn't say that children without sin have a gift and children with sin don't have a gift. Every child has a gift. And, you know, the system will make you and draw you into many other avenues that are not able for you to have that self-care and reflect on the fact that you still have a gift. It's always a negative. And because you know, I always say in England, we always give everything a label. Do you understand? But those labels don't have to be the things that define you. They let you know what a condition is.
Absolutely.
And then you then do your due diligence around understanding that condition. But already when we were talking about earlier, men being unable to speak, when you're going through that trauma of realizing and recognizing that your child has sinned, you're in that flight or fight mode, isn't it? You just want to escape because you're trying to process. But the thing is, there should be a time where you're now coming back.
Now that can I just say that's where I want us to get to now. There should be a time for coming back, but do we have that? That's where we have a lot of dads that are not there.
So I'd like to contribute this because I think when we talk about children, you also have to look at the process by which children came to be. Children came into being because two people got together for however long they got together and they created something intentionally, unintentionally. And a lot of the times, a lot of the politics surrounding the coming together, the staying together, those are what contribute a lot to whether men then go, do I want added responsibility or do I want to escape? This is not that, in quotes, women are to blame or that men are to blame, but it's not knowing how to stay together that contributes to this dysfunctional miscarriage of responsibilities. So, for example, when women are on the labor bed, she had to have entered a bed or entered a situation prior to that. No one talks about that whole coming together. We just talk about the result of the coming together. And so there may be traumas involved in the coming together. There may be traumas involved in the process of the pregnancy. And then we get to this point and then suddenly you're just told your child, in quotes, isn't perfect. Added responsibilities. Everyone starts thinking, so what do I need to do? When do I need to, oh no. And they start pinpointing all the points of responsibility without actually practicalizing anything. Most men, if they do the calculation, and it's got to be real with you, most men, when we do calculations, if we can't see ourselves in that equation, we're out. It's not because anyone has told us we can or can't be. It's usually you just can't see yourself in that equation.
Wow, that is quite deep. You can't see yourself in that situation.
Yeah, or that equation, because you've gone, me plus her has produced this challenge. That's not what I was planning for. My calculations were off. Let me go and try again somewhere else. And if you know our African culture, a lot of the times, unfortunately, it pushes men to go, oh, this was a mistake. Let me go try it with another person. Let me go try it with another person. And then they find out actually there seems to be a common trend. But instead of accepting that, it might actually even be with me, I might have had SEN challenges, and I didn't even know I had them.
Yeah.
But instead of self-investigating, we just replace until you have several children walking around who have varying experiences of SEN because nobody sat down to go, but Dad, you might have a challenge here that you need to address.
Yeah.
And that I think is key, because the system, as soon as a parent has been advised that their child has SEN, whatever is on the spectrum that they have, there is nothing that really is culturally, especially within our community, that's culturally appropriate, that helps those parents understand
Absolutely.
the situation.
For me, that is the powerful thing, because one of the things we're trying to do is that let's help you understand it. But then they'll say, but my husband's not there, my partner's not there to help him understand it, because we don't even see the man around to help him understand it.
Yeah.
Does he want to be there?
Yeah. Well, yes. I think every man in some ways hopes that they can live up to the image of being a good father. But at the same time, what we can't pretend and act as if that unfortunately, the economic situation doesn't favor anyone sitting at home looking at their children. You have to just go and solve the main problem. Do we have food? Do we have a roof over our heads? The rents are going up. AI technology is coming. It's telling me if I'm not careful, it's going to raise my child for me. I don't even know what AI is. So men, it's just unfortunate, but the saturation of things that men feel that they have to learn and adapt to is so high that you just go, you're forced to feel like it's either or. So, you know, when I was saying that I'm kind of relearning this idea of what reconstructing this masculinity concept, I've always gone, maybe you can't change. Maybe this is weird the way you are. But I have to actually go, in order to change, I have to go, it's possible for me to change.
Yes.
I have to change the wording around the idea of change.
Yes.
Instead of making it a negative experience, like it's going to make me less than, I have to ascribe to change is going to make me more than what I am right now, because I need higher capacity for the things that I need to achieve. And it's that whole process that most men will not go through if they don't have the right soundboarding, if they don't have the right conversations. You know, my brother mentioned here earlier, he said his father, you said something about you talked to someone, and it's through that conversation. Was it your dad that you said you spoke to?
Yeah.
He said something that all men need to have the opportunity to experience. It's called soundboarding. So when I have an idea or when I have a thought, good or bad, do you know, I think I should cheat on my wife, for example. When you go and talk to your friend, if your friend is of the same stupidity, yeah, and he's even like, bro, I told you the woman that you have, she's not good for you. That soundboard can destroy your whole process.
Absolutely.
But if you speak to somebody who is sober-minded, who is going to reflect to you wisdom in the process, that is how you know, the word, it says, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
And a lot of men don't get to have the iron sharpens iron experience for them to go, oh, you mean if my child has SEN, there's another way to look at it. That means they might actually be brilliant, but in other ways that I don't understand yet. So brother, what did you do? Oh, I showed up, for example, the one who shows up to the meetings. No, bro, I go to all the meetings because there's no way a teacher is going to tell me that my child can't learn. I need to understand. And then, you know, but if the guy is like, bro, I told you shouldn't have even been with that girl in the first place. Now the man is like, see, my error. I don't see myself in the future of that process. I'm out. Or they gradually start to leave because their soundboards are all telling them, get out of Dodge.
And that's the reason why we have a lot of moms that are single-handedly.
Yeah, 1,000%.
So many.
Yeah.
I want to bring it. What you've said now, it's still taking us back to that. Who are you? Who are you talking to? And do you want to talk? That's it.
Yeah.
But there's also because now we see in the society, the system, they're trying to make it as well, in quotes, easy, but not that easy. Because it's not easy for moms, talk less of dads.
Yeah.
But now we have culture.
Additional layer coming
The culture, please.
Yeah.
Because I think that actually informs why we do it. It's not just the fact that, I've messed up, but culture.
Yeah, so culture plays another key role in shaping how we look at things and situation. Like the other time you're talking about it coming back. How do we come back? How do we realize? So the system needs to help. And for example, when we have some kind of podcast like this, where people try to explain or narrate the situation on how it goes with their support, especially the few fathers that are present, to now see how it help the situation and the outcome to be good, that could help motivate fathers. For example, there was some certain time at stage of my wife pregnancy that at the antenatal process I need to be there. So I have to take excuse from work and it's good. But when I say in Nigeria, and that is not even the father don't even know when do you go to antenatal, what is the process, what is but here they want it to be part of the process before the child is being born, which is great. And so there needs to be some narrative of how effective the presence of fathers in this situation of sin. So that when they now see this and people are narrating true life story, it makes people to reflect and rethink. Because why father seems absent is they look at the now and not the future. For example, if you want to write an exams, preparing for that exam is so difficult, so hard. So if you focus on only the now, how difficult it is, you abandon the books and you fail.
Wow.
But when you're looking at, at the end, I'm going to get those A's, I'm going to get admission.
I just like the way you bring in all your
So when you look at the future, the end result, the process, say, it's going to be, this have happened, you can't change the narrative of what has happened, but you can change the outcome of the future. That is that support.
It's about hope.
And so you have hope that, this is the condition of the child, but that's not the end of the world. There's a brighter future ahead. So sometimes the culture will not be, it's actually from her. It's
Mom's fault.
If the child is good, it's the child, that child. If the child is bad, it's from mom. So.
Yeah. In terms of that culture, and we all come from different backgrounds. You say the culture of the UK, the Western world, the Asian world, the African world. But then the thing, when I talk about culture, and I begin to reflect on what culture do we really, really want to bring to bear. So I say, the one that supersedes all the cultures, the kingdom culture. So how would God, I say that as a Christian, how would God respond to the news like this? And as men, for us to be putting ourselves in the position that we see ourselves as his representatives, that how would Daddy God respond to hearing this news? And how will I now take that news and what will I do with it? Because it's one thing to receive the news and it's one thing to process it down and then make a meaningful assessment of what I'm going to do next. And as I was listening to you, Doc, I was thinking about how, here we are now. Let's be real. Here we are now. You, me, all of us here as men. How can we take this information that we're talking about right now, and you said it earlier, and put it out there to the mainstream, as opposed to what the mainstream is putting into us? How we take the information that, listen, just because your child has a different way of doing things does not mean that they are stupid.
Could I bring up another point just to add to, then we can explore that. You said something about labels. We never knew about dyslexics. Being dyslexic is not, we don't. We just like, either you know how to read or you don't. That's how we brought up.
And if you don't,
there's something wrong somewhere.
Wrong with you.
So now there's an issue with that because a lot of our children, they struggle with that. But because we don't understand that, and I think that's where we're coming from, about putting that out there, that this is what this means. How do we support? I was talking to somebody recently and she was going on and on about her daughter not being able to, I think the child is still young. And so I said, it's still good that you can do this now. She was saying, but she doesn't like to read. And the teacher said, give her a simple, even the simple, she just doesn't want to read. I said, that's the more reason why you need to explore how you can support her better. Because sometimes we just think that then you bring out the cane. Why are you not reading? Can you see where the culture comes? Because that's where we're coming from. That why do you're being lazy?
your
You're being
fault.
playful. You're not go and take your book and read. Can you see the element of how that culture comes into play?
Absolutely.
So it's about having those discussions, because I've seen I've been in spaces whereby even people that have gone to university, people that are GPs said because they didn't get to know that they had a condition of ADHD, they had to go the extra mile to study for their medical exams.
Yes.
It's funny you say, I was gonna say, I think one of the most important things is also to look at historically how Black people passed on lessons of life. As Black people, for most cultures, things weren't written down.
Oral culture.
It was an oral culture. So you passed on with your words. You passed on with a song. You passed on with a prayer. You passed on with a blessing. You passed on that thing, that unseen confidence, that unseen elixir. You passed it on through these ways. And when colonial structures came into play, colonial structures said, well, we understand you talk about it, but we want you to write it down.
That's primitive.
And that exactly what you're doing is primitive. And so the way in which we communicate was diminished, and then it was replaced with this written culture.
Yes.
And so this writing becomes the primary way in which information is communicated, stored, and kept. And then what happens is that as colonial structures took over, our people had to now fight to get access to this new culture or way of communicating. Because if you're looking at ancient Egypt, it was pictures. It was either oral tradition or pictures, but we were told it's in words. So it was recoded. And in that recoding is where challenges have come, where we spend more time fighting to get access to this. Meanwhile, there are children who will see a picture, 6 pictures, 10 pictures,
And they'll get it.
and they will remember and they will know it. But the culture that we are in, especially Western culture, says you can't read, you can't have access. It's still part of that. The education pool is still very heavy on if you can't read, you can't access. And if you don't access, then you are nobody. You're not going to achieve much. And that reverse engineering that problem is where our people have to now specialize. So when a young child comes up and they've been told Johnny's not reading, he's not reading at the age of he's 10, but he's reading at the age of a 5-year-old. Very few times do we get the exploration of, okay, what does Johnny actually like?
Absolutely.
Because if you tapped into, a lot of the success I've had in education has been tapping into what young people like, understanding it, and then utilizing it to teach the lessons. So
You know why I love this so much? Because it's just bringing to mind that even about us reclaiming the narrative in terms of Black people, our storytelling, our music, and getting our young people to explore and letting them know that you are who you are. You're better because you do, and you're celebrating that. We really need to do.
To be honest, I can tell you, I'll give you a strong confirmation of this. This is part of the reason why Nollywood is so successful.
Stories.
Because stories, oral, and visual. The English is broken, it's transformed, it's metamorphosed.
It's flying.
It is a top earning industry. The issue was never the language. It was always being able to reclaim the narrative and be able to tell your own stories.
This is it.
And that's what a lot of young people have been prevented from doing. Because if you're not, I prefer pictures. Why? Like, I don't know if you know, but there's this thing, it's called manga and anime. So a lot of young people are enamored with manga and anime because of pictures. And they love stories. The story is in another language, completely foreign. They're like, I'll read the subtitles. But what you'll notice is the education pool does not take advantage of this idea because, of course, it's coded. You don't learn the code. You haven't learned our code, therefore you're not capable. But ask some of these kids who like to watch these cartoons and say, can you tell me about the way in which the character has developed? We read Shakespeare books, and the kids go, I don't know what Macbeth was
They
thinking
don't
when he
even
did that.
care.
But if you ask them the same question based on the cartoon that they watch, the interest, the level of intelligence that will come out of a young person when they say, do you know what, when I watched that Dragon Ball Z character and he went into the hyperbolic time chamber and he began to train, it gave me confidence to understand that I don't have to stay at the same level that I am.
Oh, wow.
That's the message you want
But
to
what,
convey.
Yeah. That's
because what you're saying
Yeah.
is a truth.
Yeah.
But where I'm at is re-engaging
Yeah.
the fathers
Yeah.
to understand. Because as I said in the beginning, I speak in faith spaces
Yeah.
about identifying your child's gifting, understanding, because the scripture says in the Amplified, you train a child in the way that they should
go, yeah.
they should grow, or in their bent, it says. So that bent means your giftings, the
Yeah.
things that you like,
I like that.
that they will not depart. We always take that scripture as a disciplinary
Yes.
situation
Absolutely.
as opposed to understanding the gift. So what I want to understand is, as fathers, now what would you say to other fathers to as a clarion call to bring them back home to the children? Because of course we have to remember, even though they've split up because of the fact that the child has sinned, there were relationship issues anyway.
Yeah.
Do you understand? That may have been the send may have been the root cause, because they didn't understand what was going on, and it could have been this accusatory. You're spoiling this child. That's why the child is misbehaving, not knowing that there's a medical
Yeah. Something going on. Yeah.
something medically that could explain some of the behavior. Do you understand? And I do believe prayer changes things, but the scripture also says faith without works is dead.
Yeah.
So if the two people that made that child are not together trying to raise this child and support, it makes it difficult. So what you say as fathers would be the clarion call to call fathers back, not necessarily to get back with their ex-partners, but to be there for that child.
Even if they don't
Because the child
understand.
never asked to be present.
Absolutely.
They were brought into presence. So now there needs to be some responsibility.
Yeah.
You have a gift. The mother has a gift. What and the child has a gift. So how can you collectively work to bring out that gift in that child?
Right. So it's interesting you say that, because my just talking from personal experience, my daughter is, the way she's going, she's turning into an author. Okay. And I blame a lot of her ability to read and her skill set to write on her mom.
Her mom does it, yeah.
Her mom is the proofreader of proofreaders. She can spot errors a mile away. So great with that. And for me, I'm more the creative side. So I've seen my daughter take a strong interest in singing and writing, and she'll pick up a camera and she'll start shooting videos and acting and creating plays. And so we can see a lot of what we are at work in her. So her one was quite easy to discover. My son, my middle one, I found his talents by mistake. So I say by mistake because when lockdown happened, we were all locked down in the house. And one of the days, I had, unfortunately, for the longest time, because I was working in education, not an excuse, but a reasoning. When I was working in education, it was hard for me to spend a lot of time reading to my kids, doing these type of practical activities. But when lockdown came, I couldn't teach anymore. I was teaching online, therefore it meant that I would have to see my children during the day. And one of the days that I spent, my son, we were doing quizzes. So a lot of the stuff that I use in class, online quizzes and stuff like that, I would put in front of my son. And it just came about that a calculation came up that even me for a second, I was like, what's the answer to that? You know, when you have to think, you're like, I'm out of this school thing. My son answered the question. It seemed like a guess, but actually I realized he had a knack for numbers. Now, mommy doesn't like numbers, but I'm okay with numbers. I'm quite confident. But it was just quite interesting to discover that about him. And the discovery happened by just spending time with My son.
Is that so? Now that's the key. That's spent. So
Yeah.
so you don't necessarily have to know, just like you said, but it's like spending that time, and that's what we want to. Because even when we do the holiday programs, we have more moms there. That's don't really. It's a sacrifice that I think it's the sacrifices that are not being made. I'm not,
Absolutely. No, fair play.
No. That's,
For me, I say even on because I podcast too, and I always say that parents should understand that they're their children's first and continuous teacher. If if the parent's eyes are not open, a child's eyes can never be open. You know.
yeah. So that presence and the time is actually very important. I say, what is the clarion call is that your children need you. That is the truth. That is children
Need you.
So
That's
like for example, so
we need you.
when my child was in nursery, Jesse, they say, oh, you have to go to this speech therapy kind of a thing. I couldn't see that, but I didn't argue with the fact. We went there after some session. So when he was in reception, that was in nursery, reception, I told the teacher, she no, she can't see anything of that nature. Now, still in reception in a different school, he's the top reader among his few people. So like from now, if we just move from one place to another, from one to distance, just get back on, he will tell you all the stops that is in between those. So the reception channel, she have written that off. She can't see that. So if we are trying to fight with that fact and say, no, it's not the right child. It's, but we try to follow the process. And went for the therapy for different session, and they say, no trace of
because
that.
children do grow out of that.
So it's important that issue of that is the clearance call that they need you, and if you show your presence there, you see that.
Even if you don't understand, just be there.
Being there is so important, especially as the one, again, I bring it back to that foundation that these children are looking at to build on. Daddy it is taken for granted that mum's going to be there. So it's an extra thing for dad to be there, to go with them, to sit with them, to understand, because in us sitting with them in those classes, we're learning as well. We're learning how we can address the supposed wrong, if you want to call it that. But that child, and then that child is also realizing that, you know what, my dad is here. My dad is here. How many times would I have been happy for my dad? Like we spoke about on one of the former podcasts. You have a school issue. You say your dad's coming. Hey, dad what? Nowhere, man. Dad finds out about something. He's coming with a whip. You understand what I'm saying? But that being there in that most crucial time where they're very vulnerable and not feeling, especially probably with a boy that's saying, I wonder how my dad feels. And then for that to be there.
It's a bit radical, but I've always wondered when I was in secondary schools teaching, I always used to be like, you wouldn't act like this if your dad was here. And then there was this crazy idea. It's crazy, but I thought, what if parents, both mom and dad, came to spend the day experiencing their children's lessons? Just one day. If schools were really interested in parental activity, participation, if they were heavily interested, I would invest in making one day where the parents can come even to experience 2 lessons. Have the first half of parents show up to do science and maths. Then in the other half, show up to do English and history. And then in the last 2 periods, have another batch of parents show up to do psychology or whatever other. And then experience what your child is learning. Because it's not until you experience what your child is learning that you will also realize that you too have SEN.
That is talk. That is it. That is it.
Realize that you've also got the ADHD.
I always say that we all have a bit of autism in us.
So you kind of have
just the level there, different.
I feel that if parents sat through, and this has got nothing to do with African, Asian, or whatever. Us needs to see, every father needs to sit in a lesson and just hear a demonstration of what it looks like. So the teacher will teach how they normally teach. I will be the student for that 1 hour. You know, because sometimes we do a lot of careers fairs and all that. Let's invite the parents in. I say, okay, mom and dad are architects, whatever fantastic career they've managed to acquire for themselves. But now they must sit down and engage with this coded language of education. I promise you, that is the day that you will have more parents have more. That one, they will respect teachers. And then they will also respect their child.
Yeah.
You don't need, the child doesn't need to go, so you were saying. I want you to tell me what happened in school today. Because a lot of the times, the things we ask of our children is because we haven't understood what they've experienced.
And that is something that I share with parents all the time. You know, we as parents, we forget how we were as children. Do you understand? Education, for example, is a very lonely journey. And if you're not participating in your child's education, you don't understand their struggles, what they're going through. Let alone you're now applying your Niger psychology on them, and they're like Gen Z and Gen. They're like, why? You're like, I will give you one back. And this one is why again.
Look at your mates. Look at your mates.
Do they have
Comparison.
You know, meanwhile, not understanding that actually Chantal might be benefiting from the fact that her parents actually read to her.
Yes.
So she seems far ahead of others because she had bedtime stories.
And statistically, it is said that parents that do read and participate in their child's education are actually adding 3 months per academic year to their child.
And meanwhile, we now have parents that literacy is an issue.
Okay.
So we're just being real. That's why. So what do we do? So we're gonna wrap up this segment because we've got so much to talk about. So going away with this, I think Elio raised the point. So what do we do? What's the clarion call? Fathers being there, even though the child might have SEN. What's your final take, Martin?
I would say try and show up to at least one parents' evening. Show up to one parent cafe meeting. Just show up. So at least you have an idea. Because sometimes when you're approached by your partner and your partner has been exposed to the knowledge, I can't lie.
You feel intimidated.
You're gonna feel intimidated and you're gonna feel dumb. And you will also realize that you're gonna bring up feelings you never knew you had within yourself. So it's better for both mom and dad to hear the same thing but from different perspectives
and talk
and
about
then
it.
come together on a consensus
Fantastic.
to solve that issue.
Yeah, I'm still echoing what Martin has said. You be part of the journey. It's part of redeeming the time.
Wow.
Out of those busy schedules that you have, when you spare that 1 hour, 2 hours to be present, it speaks volume and you will redeem those time. And again, the family will be healthy.
Yeah. And mine would simply be, it's not a death sentence. Ask questions and you'll learn a lot. And it will help. It will help you, it will help them, it will help the family, it will help society.
Yes.
I would say, and I'm not trying to accuse, but don't allow the fact that your child has a diagnosis now become an indefinite punishment. Be present. They need you.
Thank you so much, guys. I just want to wrap up to say it's been fantastic listening to all the contributions. It is about being there, but for me, from listening to everybody, it's about the sacrifice, because I think that is key as well. It's not easy being there because we know we've got lives to live and there's a lot going on in everybody's life. But for me, it's mainly about the sacrifice that needs to be made to say, you know what, I'm going to be intentional about this. I might have to lose or take some annual leave, but this child is important. And there's something we all said together, and I'd like us to echo that. The children need us.
The children do.
Could we see that together, please?
The children
need us. So thank you. See you next time on this podcast.